This will show you how to get started with this online compiler called onlinegdb.com. And we're going to be using C++. So after you go to this website in your web browser, come over here and drop this down and select C++ as your language. This online compiler can be used for many different languages. Now, this is the actual source code of your program, and this is the name of the file that it's in, main.cpp. That file extension .cpp is required for C++ programs. Now, this online compiler does everything in the cloud. And so C++ is a compiled language, meaning you write the source code, what you're seeing right here, and then when you compile it and run it, it creates an executable for that platform. And in this case, we're running in the cloud, so it's actually creating an executable that runs in the cloud, probably on a Linux computer. Okay, and so this should be a working program right here. And so if you just hit run, it compiles it and runs. The output of this program is this hello world right here. This other green stuff is just other information that it outputs, the compiler right here. And so it actually created an executable and ran that executable right here. Now, we can't see that file, the executable file, but now I would recommend doing the sign up right here. You don't have to. I'm not signed up right here. But if you do a sign up and log in, it's free. Then it gives you a little bit of cloud space to store your files. Right now, this file that I'm working on, this source code, will not save. As soon as I close out the web browser, it's gone. So you need to make sure to download it. Well, I haven't made any changes to it, but if you did, you need to download it. Now back to C++. C++, or usually the first program you do in a new programming language, often, or a new compiler, is it just outputs hello world to the screen. So just for example, the Las Vegas Sphere, first thing that it output on its outside screen was hello world. Okay, so that's real typical, is just output hello world and do nothing else. Okay, so now, so let's start looking at pieces of your C++ program. Okay, first of all, up here, this is a comment right here. This is actually called a block comment. And so this isn't necessary for the compiler. The compiler ignores comments. So I'm just going to delete it because we don't need to see all of that right there. It's just a little ad for onlinegdb. But now what I do like to see at the top of your program, you can put line comments. Anytime you start a line with 2 forward slashes, that is a comment. And so like at the minimum for your programs that you submit, you should put a comment with your name on there. You could also put another comment with the homework number, whatever, well, or something like that. Or sometimes you will put a comment about, what the program does and stuff like that. And that's all the comments are all part of documenting a program. As a program gets larger, it needs more documentation because different people will look at the program and the comments help them understand what is going on in your program. Okay. So now, so let's look at the other pieces of this program. The programming languages are rather limited in what they do. And so most programming languages, you will include or import additional libraries or classes or something like that at the top. And so that pulls in other components for that programming language. So in this case, we are including a library called IOStream. And that allows us to output to the screen, to output hello world. And it also allows to input data from the keyboard. So all the programs in my class will have this include IOStream, and then some programs will have additional includes to do additional components. Okay, so now one thing I'm going to recommend in all your programs is to add using namespace standard, STD like that. Okay, so this is not advisable in very large programs, but our programs for this class are considered very small, and so it's okay to do that. Now, when you do that, you don't have, every time you do this console out, the C out to output something to the screen or input stuff from the keyboard C in, you don't have to add this standard : in front of it. So it'll work like that. And so now one thing to get used to doing every time, until you get really confident, every time you make a change to a program, go ahead and run it again to make sure that there's no problem. Okay, so I'm going to put a problem in, an error in the code. I'm going to take away that semicolon right there. And now when I run it, notice you get an error. Okay, so let's look at that error. So it's basically saying, okay, in this file, main.cpp, and so then right here, main.cpp : 8:24. Okay, that first number 8, that means line 8. Okay, so line 8 right there. And 24 is how many characters over it detected the problem. Okay, and so then the error message says it expected a semicolon. Sometimes the error messages aren't so clear and you have to figure stuff out. Okay, so now, so I'm going to put that back in there. If you have an error in your program, don't add more code. You got to fix the error first. Also, if you have multiple errors, always fix the first one first. You know, you could have a whole page of errors. Scroll up and go for fix the first one first, because sometimes that first error can cause other errors. Okay, so that's basic debugging of your program. Oh, by the way, these are called syntax errors. When there's an error in your source code that keeps it from compiling, a syntax error. As opposed to like a logic error, which means your program compiles and runs, but it doesn't output the correct information. A runtime error, we all know what runtime errors are. That's when programs crash, when you run it and it just crashes. We've all seen that on our computers and on our phones. Apps just crash and go away. Okay, so now also in our program, we have our code is going to go inside of functions. And so this function is called main. So all programs need to have a function named main. And that is the entry point of your program. Later on, we will have multiple functions in our source code, but it has to be one named main because that's where the program begins. And we'll go into kind of the format of a function later. Int means an integer, a number without a decimal point. And so that basically means that, well, this function returns an integer. And that's basically what this is right here. Now, your code will probably work if you remove that return 0, but that's typical, is that your main function is going to return a number. And so it's basically returning that number back to the operating system. And you can see right here, the operating system says, oh, the program finished with exit code 0. That's because it returned a 0 right here. So that just tells the operating system the program ended normally. But I think it'll probably work if you remove that. In fact, we can try it right now and see. Yeah, see it worked. Control Z to undo. Because it's common practice to put that in there for the main function. Okay? And so functions will have an opening and closing brace, curly brace. I just call it a brace right there. And now here's one thing, is that whenever you have an opening closing brace, all the code inside of it should be tabbed over. Now it works if it isn't tabbed over, but that is common practice. It's to make it more readable because it shows the different levels in your program. So Now, if you've got some code, I can select it right there. If you select a block of code in any editor, if you hit the tab key, it increases the indentation. If I hold the shift and do tab, it decreases the indentation. So I can put it back to where. And of course, it's going to still work if it's not tabbed over, but that's all part of readability. Opening, closing brace, tab over the code. Okay. So now, now one thing is that a lot of the code that I usually write, I usually have an extra space right there. C out. The two lesson signs is a redirect. C out stands for console out. So that just basically means, okay, send hello world to the console. The console meaning our little output screen right here. Okay. So now on into the hello world a little bit more. If I put a \n in there, that means a new line. Okay, a backslash is a special character. So that means skip to the next line. So I run it and you can see what it does. Now it does that and then skips to the next line. Okay, so one thing that's real typical is in these couts, a lot of them will end with a backslash n. Otherwise, it won't skip to the next line. Okay, so like the next one here, if I go cout line 2. Okay, so see here it outputs hello world and then line 2. If I didn't have this \n in there and ran it, it's going to be all on one line right there. Okay, so that's where that \n is. Okay, so this is just your basic hello world program. Playing around with it just a little bit to have it output some things. I have a lot more in my video on the cout statement. We'll go into a lot more depth here. We introduced comments up here. And so now back to this online GDB. To download your code, you can, over here, download file right there. So if I click on that, leave site, download current file. Huh. I don't know. Okay. So it downloaded. I thought it was going to leave the site. It didn't. Okay. And so now that would have downloaded it to your downloads folder. So if I go into my downloads folder, here is the file that it just downloaded right here. This is the source, the text source code file. And so now, well, first of all, if you don't see the .cpp, or always make sure that you have your file name extensions enabled, because that just causes more confusion, because Windows wants to hide your .cpp or in your .txt and all your other file name extensions. So make sure those are enabled in your file explorer right here. So now file names for code, it's okay to change the first one. Like maybe you want to call this homework 2 or something like that. It's okay to change that, but it needs to have the .cpp extension. So leave the .cpp. But yeah, you can change the actual name of the file right there, which you'll want to, because you'll want to organize. You want to save your files and organize them. Okay. So now I think that's other things like to upload a file is right up here. Of course, so if you want to have your file and upload it, you can do it right there. So I think that's about all I was going to cover in this introduction to the online GDB.